Welcome. Joined by a really special guest today, Futuristic. The dude's done a lot from music to starting his own clothing company to all over the place. But what we're going to start out talking about today is a lot of mental health stuff. So I wanted to start off just by talking about I recently completed the 75 hard challenge. I don't
Oh,
think you necessarily started that, but you kind of went on a sobriety journey of your own. So I kind of wanted to start off by just chatting about that.
yeah. I tried to do the 75 hard challenge and I failed. I failed at the 75 hard challenge, but I am over 7 months sober and I have lost 40 pounds damn near this year. Um, I'm at like 30, yeah, I've lost like 34 pounds this year. Just off eating healthy, getting my mental right, getting my physical right, and just focusing on, yeah, taking care of mind, body, and soul.
Yeah. What were some of the things you liked about it, things you didn't like about it?
75 hard.
Yeah, specifically.
I mean, I got two young kids. Not that there's any excuse to anything. I hate excuses, but it was just really tough to get in both the workouts always. And then the diet as well, just because from traveling and doing all those things, it's hard to like, if I got there's some days where like 3 days in a row, it's like I'm flying here, then I'm flying there, and I'm flying here. It's super tough to be like to stick to the diet portion of it. So I would say that like I I'm probably on like day 150 hard, right? But there's probably
Yeah.
been like 10 cheat days in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like I kind of live on the 80-20 balance of like 80% of the time I'm doing like perfect, and then the other 20 is like, you know what? I'm gonna have a cookie right now.
Yeah.
Uh so yeah, yeah. I feel like that's more sustainable.
No, for sure. And something I wanted to talk about, I think the timing of this like lined up perfectly because I actually, after finishing it, realized that in some ways it was like horrible for me. Just because
Mm,
before that, had worked a lot on like mental health and like mindfulness and being more aware of the things in my head. And I feel like by doing that 75 hard, I just became like a checkbox person where it was like, all right, you just do this every day. And I was like realizing I was happier at work because that was like my free time to be myself. And then I would go out in the real world and couldn't even talk to people. I felt like I was like a gym bro and like lost all my social skills. I had to like reevaluate afterwards who I was as a person.
right, because you felt like you had to live a certain way because you gave yourself a checklist for your life instead of just kind of taking what life throws at you and taking it in, understanding it, acknowledging it, and then making a decision based off of, what you kind of wanted for yourself. Yeah, no, I've done that many a times where it's like I get super down and I'm like, why am I down? Because I feel like I'm failing myself, but it's like, nah, it's life is about balance and you're supposed to enjoy the fruits of your labor and you're supposed to have these balances. So I agree with you. I feel that. I've been there.
What started your shift? Because I wanted to actually start this out. I had this really cool picture from I think it was February 2016. You and
Mhm.
Devon Terrell opened up for Mike Stud at Skyway in Minneapolis. And I got a picture with you guys after the show. I couldn't find the picture
Right.
to pull it up. But
Gotcha.
what started the transition? Because I know you know the the alley oop dunks in the crowds and like the party lifestyle. Futuristic was
Yeah.
cool, but then in like 2018 or so, the Zachary Lewis page started, and there was like Mental Health Monday and stuff. What kind of
Yeah.
transition?
Um, my whole life was a checkbox. My whole life. I've had the goal, like I hit all my goals, and it was honestly kind of weird. Like, and people almost don't even believe me when I tell them, but like, I told my parents I'd be a millionaire by 25. I knew I was gonna get married at 30 and have kids. Like I knew I was gonna be a successful artist. And obviously there's times where you waver and there's times where you like feel like, damn, is this really gonna happen? And so I would say 2016 was the start of it was like, yo, I did it. I did it. Like I did because that year I did the Mike Stud tour. The year before I had dropped the Rise and Coast to Coast, and those, I mean, not to like go into the money stuff, but it was like I went from not having money to being very well off. And then I just realized like, yo, I've been working since I was 5 years old. relentlessly for this thing, and I've sacrificed so much and gave up so much. And yes, I was partying and having a great time and doing all this, but literally I remember the moment I was laying on stage at the end of my world tour, which was later that year, and I was just like, yo, this isn't fun. Like, it's not fun anymore. I did it. What's next? And so, like, I had never taken a vacation. I was a tightwad, like, because I had this goal of being a millionaire. Like, bro, my manager and my homies would be eating at nice places, and obviously I'm making more money than they were, and I'm getting McDonald's. Like, because I'm like, nah, I can't spend money. So I would say I found my love for life right after that. So right after that tour is when I found my love for life, and that's when I started traveling. I started seeing how other people lived that were like in poverty, but they were happier. I'd go to like I went to Costa Rica and I went on cruises, and anytime I'd go on a vacation, I would also make sure that I went to the poorest part of that spot. Because a lot of people go to a resort and they just stay there and they're like, oh, this spot's amazing. And it's like, nah, drive 10 minutes down the road and look at how poverty stricken this place is. And so I would do that. And I realized from talking to people and being around people, it's like, yo, people that don't have no shoes and don't have a house are happier than us. And so that's really where it started, was just kind of diving into what life actually is and seeing the different elements of how people lived and just appreciating what I had, and then exploring new food, exploring new places, exploring new people, exploring like looking into the psychology of like why people were depressed, because I feel like depression almost became a fad. Like, and it kind of still is, where like artists glorify it and then they have to live by it because their fan base sticks to their words of them being depressed and them being in this down place. So basically, man, I just wanted to help people find happiness, because what I realized is all the money in the world didn't make me happy. All the success in the world didn't make me happy. It was more like the freedom of life and the relationships that I could build and the people that I could touch and all of those things that provided me the most happiness.
Yeah. Do you think that some of that came from where, like, the situation you grew up in? Just because I know personally for me, I grew up in a pretty poor home situation, and I know that for so long, every goal that I had was money oriented. And then I didn't, obviously am nowhere where you're at, but I had a goal of like, I'm gonna hit 100K in a year, and that was like for me, that was like all that I like ever wanted to get to. And then it finally, like, I signed the contract to where I was gonna get that, and I was like, that doesn't, like, I'm still the same person I was yesterday.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
anything, it's like, now where do I go from here? Because this was the goal I had that I was going to set out and accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I guess to answer the question of did it come from my upbringing, my dad was a super tightwad. Super tightwad. And he made me work for everything I ever did from the time I was born, basically, you know. So and I wouldn't say it was a bad thing. I'm very grateful for the fact that like I wasn't born into money and like we weren't super well off. Not that we were like hella poor. We went through phases. Like we were hella poor for a little bit. Like I posted a picture of my old house on the Zillow for my old house is $20,000. My old house I lived in is $20,000. So it's like that tells you a little bit about how, you know, what it's like. But yeah, I would say that had some impact. But I think also like just the culture and the dream, and I just had a dream to be a rapper. And you know, when you're 5 years old, and like in my day it was like Lil Romeo and Bow Wow were popping, and I'm like, I want to be that. I thought I was going to be famous when I was 5, when I was 6, you know. So just that goal, and being obsessed with the goal. So partly how I grew up, and partly just the obsession from a young age of like, yo, this is how I'm going to get it. um yeah.
Yeah, and now you've transitioned a lot more into, whether it's, you just dropped a big collab album with where you're putting a bunch of younger, less well known artists on, and
Hmm.
whether it's Indie Amplify, or a lot of your connections now are all focused on helping bring up other people. Was
Yeah.
that did you kind of have that vision in 2016, or is that kind of developed, or how is that transition?
If you really look back, I've always done it. Even like Devon posted something yesterday, and he's like crying on his podcast about to shed a tear on his podcast about like the first time he was able to live off music, and it was, you know, I sent him $20,000 to his bank account from our album, you know. And even if you go further back in time, like I always wanted to have a group of people and like us all to make it. And I always wanted my family to be well off. And I always wanted to help everybody from the time I was 5. That was like, that's the rapper story, right? It's like, buy your mama a house and do this and do that and put your homies on. And so even like back in 2012, like Kyle, super duper Kyle, who's huge now, way bigger than I ever got. Like there was a point in time where I was bigger than Kyle, and his manager didn't know how to be a manager at the time and was asking me, how do you get on blogs and how do you run ads and how do you do this and how do you do that? And I was gaming him up, and he was the first artist that I ever saw where I was like, you're going to be bigger than me. I knew it. I knew he was going to be bigger than me. So I wanted to do everything in my power to help. And not that I had a huge impact on where he is and what he did. He would have got there regardless. But I always tried to help artists when I could. I told Devon the same thing when I met him. I'm like, bro, you're supposed to be way bigger than me. Like, you are. So, and now it's just like, now that I have a platform and now that I know the business really well and what works and what doesn't and how to maneuver, it's like I'm actually able to find talent and be like, yo, this is the blueprint. This is how you do it. This is how you make money. This is how you save money, and be able to put people on, whether it's through indie or managing or just doing educational videos or giving my resources. And yeah, I love it. And that means that while my artists are all on tour, I can be at home with my family. And sure, there's still money involved, you know, where it's like I still got to support my family and I still got to do what I got to do. But like, you know, they're really benefiting as well. So it's cool to be able to have my hands in so many things and also help so many people at the same time.